This year's Met Gala didn't feel like a fashion event. It felt like walking through a gallery where paintings, sculptures, and myths suddenly came to life. Most people focused on the celebrities, but as an artist, I became obsessed with the artworks hiding behind these looks. For those unfamiliar, the Met Gala is an annual fundraising event held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, organized to celebrate the museum's Costume Institute and its yearly fashion exhibition. Every year, celebrities and designers are invited to interpret a specific dress code connected to the exhibition's theme. But in 2026, the red carpet became something much more immersive, a space where famous paintings and sculptures were translated into living fashion moments. So let's take a closer look at the artworks that inspired some of the most memorable celebrity looks of the night. Let's talk about one of the most talked about looks of the night, and personally, my favorite as well. Emma Chamberlain's stunning Van Gogh-inspired dress that completely stole the spotlight. Vincent van Gogh is without a doubt one of the most frequently referenced artists of the 21st century. Because his visual language has become so instantly recognizable, people are naturally drawn to anything that echoes his work or aesthetic. Mugler isn't referencing just one specific Vincent van Gogh's painting here. The dress feels more like a collage of Van Gogh's entire visual language, pulling from the emotion, texture, and movement that run throughout his work. One of the clearest references is the poet's garden, created during an incredibly productive period in Arles in 1888, often referred to as the Garden of Arles. And when you look at these works, the first thing you notice isn't tranquility, it's motion. The trees, the pathways, the grass, nothing feels completely still. Van Gogh's brushstrokes move across the canvas with this restless energy, making nature feel alive, almost like it's breathing. You can also clearly feel the influence of Japanese ukiyo-e prints, which deeply inspired him at the time. Instead of using traditional European depth and perspective, Van Gogh flattens the space into something more decorative and dreamlike. The trees and pathways almost turn into graphic shapes rather than realistic forms. Even the title, The Poet's Garden, reveals how symbolic the series was for him. Van Gogh didn't see this place as just another public park. In his imagination, it became an idealized space for artists and poets, almost a sacred landscape for creativity itself. At this point in his life, he was preparing for Paul Gauguin to join him in Arles, dreaming of creating a kind of artistic brotherhood. So the garden stops feeling like a real location and starts becoming something psychological. Almost an emotional state of mind. Color plays a huge role in that feeling. The tension between the yellows, greens, and blues creates emotional intensity rather than natural realism. For Van Gogh, yellow is never just sunlight. It represented warmth, hope, and a kind of spiritual energy. And technically, these paintings are incredibly physical. Van Gogh used thick layers of paint applied directly onto the canvas through impasto, giving the surface an almost sculptural quality. Light doesn't just illuminate the painting, it catches on the texture of the paint itself. That's also why so much of his work loses its emotional impact in digital reproductions. The texture is part of the experience, and honestly, that's exactly what Mugler translates into couture here. Instead of treating the dress like flat fabric, the design recreates Van Gogh's relationship with paint itself. The layered textures, glossy, varnish-like finishes, and hand-painted transitions make the entire garment feel almost three-dimensional, less like a dress, and more like a painting that somehow started moving. Now we are looking. Hunter Schafer's Met Gala 2026 look felt less like a direct costume recreation and more like a modern reinterpretation of Mäda Primavesi by Gustav Klimt. Prada wasn't trying to literally copy the painting. They were translating Klimt's visual language into fashion. The strongest connection between the dress and the artwork is definitely the floral world surrounding the figure. In Klimt's painting, Mäda is immersed in decorative patterns, flowers, and layers of color. Prada recreates that same atmosphere through layered fabrics, floral appliques, and the patterned lining hidden beneath the dress. But what makes the look really interesting is the way it feels aged and fragmented. Instead of presenting Klimt's world in a polished way, Prada almost treats it like an artifact that's been worn down by time. The torn textures and distressed surfaces make the dress feel as if it survived for over a century inside an archive before reappearing on the red carpet. Mäda Primavesi by Gustav Klimt is one of the most refined examples of Klimt's late portrait style. Painted between 1912 and 1913, the work belongs to a period after his famous golden phase, when his art became lighter, more colorful, and psychologically nuanced. The painting is deeply connected to the aesthetics of the Vienna Secession movement, but unlike the heavy gold surfaces and Byzantine influences of his earlier works, Klimt replaces gold here with vibrant color, playful patterns, and a sense of visual rhythm. The canvas almost vibrates with energy. What immediately stands out is the way Mäda seems suspended in a decorative universe rather than a real physical space. There's almost no traditional perspective. Instead, Klimt surrounds her with patterns, floral forms, and fields of color that feel dreamlike and immersive. It's one of his signature techniques, placing the figure not inside a room, but inside an atmosphere. Mäda's face remains naturalistic and emotionally grounded. Klimt often used this tension in his portraits. The world becomes symbolic, but the human presence stays real. And unlike many of his earlier works centered around sensuality or femme fatale imagery, this painting carries a much lighter emotional tone. There's a sense of youth, vitality, and elegance. It feels less concerned with mystery and desire and more connected to the beauty of modern life itself. Another Klimt reference coming from Gracie Abrams Chanel look, Inspire from The Kiss. The Kiss by Gustav Klimt isn't just one of the most famous paintings in art history. It's one of the defining images of early modern European culture. Painted between 1907 and 1908, the work belongs to Klimt's legendary Golden Phase, a period heavily influenced by Byzantine mosaics, symbolism, and decorative art. In Klimt's work, gold isn't just decorative. He uses it to pull the figures out of ordinary reality and place them into something more timeless and almost sacred. Gracie's dress creates a very similar effect. On the red carpet, it didn't even read like traditional fabric. It looked more like a surface covered in light. The metallic finish gave the entire look this glowing, almost untouchable quality, which instantly recalls Klimt's golden world. There's also a strong connection in the detailing. The geometric embellishments across the dress create a mosaic-like texture that feels directly inspired by Klimt's ornamental style. Instead of flat decoration, the surface becomes part of the visual experience itself, exactly like in The Kiss, where pattern and figure almost merge together. When we examine the painting, at first glance, the work seems simple, two lovers embracing in a kiss. But the longer you look at it, the stranger and more dreamlike it becomes. The background dissolves into pure gold abstraction. It feels timeless, almost sacred, as if the figures have been removed from ordinary reality altogether. The use of gold is especially important. Klimt had been deeply inspired by the Byzantine mosaics he saw in Ravenna, and here gold functions as more than decoration or luxury. It erases material reality. The figures almost dissolve into light, which is why the painting feels both sensual and spiritual at the same time. One of the most fascinating aspects of the composition is the visual contrast between masculine and feminine energy. The man's robe is covered in sharp black rectangles and geometric forms, while the woman's clothing is filled with circles, floral motifs, and softer organic patterns. Klimt turns gender into visual symbolism. Technically, the painting blurs the line between fine art and decorative object. Klimt combines oil paint with gold leaf and ornamental detail, creating a surface that feels almost jewel-like. He wasn't just painting an image, he was creating an immersive visual experience. What also makes the work feel surprisingly modern is the way the two figures seem to lose themselves inside one another. There's this idea that love can erase the boundaries of the self. Anok Yai's Met Gala look was appreciated that night. Her black dress may seem like an ordinary evening dress, but she herself is the art. In her look, she draws references from the Madonna and the Weeping Statues of Sicily. At its core, this is not just about sculpture. It is about belief becoming visible. In the Sicilian tradition of the Weeping Madonna, the Virgin Mary is no longer perceived as a static sculpture, but as something emotionally alive. The tears create this powerful paradox. An object made of stone that appears to carry human emotion. It is where material form begins to feel like presence. Anok Yai's Met Gala appearance evokes a similar sensibility. The way the material interacts with light creates a surface that feels emotionally charged, reminiscent of the luminous presence of those devotional statues. In this context, the body itself becomes secondary. Meaning is carried through texture, reflection, and atmosphere. This is also where the idea of performed sacredness becomes relevant. In Sicily, these statues are not experienced as distant artworks, but as living presences that gather collective emotion. In a parallel way, the Met Gala transforms fashion into a cultural ritual where clothing operates beyond aesthetics and enters the realm of symbolism. Ultimately, both contexts point to the same idea. Symbols can exceed their physical form and become emotionally active. What makes Anok Yai's interpretation particularly striking is that she does not appear as someone simply wearing a dress. She embodies the work itself. Her presence, posture, expression, and styling constructs a living icon rather than a conventional red carpet image. And what deepens this transformation is the process behind it. In her behind-the-scenes footage, you can actually observe how this presence is built step by step, making the final image feel less like a moment and more like a carefully composed ritual. What do you think about these looks? Do you feel the designers did justice to the artworks they referenced? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The Met Gala art hunt continues in the next videos, so you can move on to them from here. If you'd like to see more art-focused content, feel free to subscribe and like the video.